House Democrats' impeachment inquiry into President Trump that could remove him from office. According to a new Washington Post George Mason University poll out this morning, 58% now endorse the impeachment probe, up 21 points since July. 38% said they do not. And reading from the Post's write-up, among all adults, 49% say the House should take the more significant step to impeach the president and call for his removal from office. A majority of independents, at 57%, said they support the impeachment inquiry into Trump. And almost half of Americans, 49%, say they approve of congressional Democrats' handling of the impeachment inquiry.
Let's bring in his great and unmatched wisdom, Bob Costa. Bob, these numbers keep moving. There was a USA Today poll on Friday, I believe it was, that showed the numbers bumping up to 44%, I think, 35%. So that spread has been expanding. Now you, of course, see in this Washington Post poll from this morning, the numbers really explode, 58% to 38%. I wonder if these polls, what can you tell us about the impact these polls are having on Republicans like Rob Portman and others to actually come out now and start talking about how the phone call was improper?
The impact could be significant. Based on my reporting with my colleague Phil Rucker for Monday's front page at the Post, talking to Republicans, they said they were keeping a close eye on polling, especially if they were suburban Republicans. And if they were Republican hawks, they were looking at possible foreign policy crises or episodes that would challenge their bond with President Trump. And now, in the succession of just a few days, you see this decision on Syria and the Kurds alarming many hawkish Republicans, and new polling that if you're a suburban Republican in a swing state will make you sit up straight and wonder, do you really want to be with President Trump heading into 2020?
Well, and Yamiche, you can look yesterday as the impeachment numbers expand, as they really, you just have to say, explode up to 58% in this Washington Post poll. And this has been an ongoing, predictable trend. You have the President of the United States yesterday coming out with just a bizarre decision based on at least what his Republican allies think and people like Pat Robertson, in a way that puts him in even greater danger, it would seem.
Well, what you have is the president needing his allies in the Senate, needing his allies on Capitol Hill to keep them as close as possible. And instead, what you have is the president taking this decision on Syria and now creating space between him and congressional Republicans. The fact that Mitch McConnell came out and said, you need to show leadership here, and he was comparing President Trump to the Obama administration, which to Republicans is sort of the ultimate way to tell a Republican that you're not doing a good job. You now have the president, I think, really trying to figure out how to wiggle out of this. He's still saying he wants to stick with his decision, but he's also saying, you know what, I'm going to not allow the thing that people worry to happen, which is that our Kurdish allies will be obliterated. So I think the president is in a very precarious situation here. Our polling at PBS NewsHour with NPR and Marist also show that people are more likely to want to support impeachment now. And just look at that Mitch McConnell statement. It was amazing to see Mitch McConnell come out, amazing to see Lindsey Graham come out. And the president, again, needs these people. This is not the time, while the Democrats are forging ahead with their impeachment inquiry, that he needs to be doing anything that would upset congressional Republicans.
Well, and you're right. The Mitch McConnell statement was actually, it was surprising because it was true. He actually talked about how the president's move helps Iran, helps Syria, helps Russia, and helps ISIS. And so many Republicans were saying that yesterday. And one of the president's biggest defenders from the evangelical movement, Pat Robertson, the 700 Club, had this to say yesterday.
The president who allowed Khashoggi to be cut in pieces without any repercussions whatsoever is now allowing the Christians and the Kurds to be massacred by the Turks. And I believe, and I want to say this with great solemnity, the president of the United States is in danger of losing the mandate of heaven if he permits this to happen.
Well, Willie, he's permitting this to happen. Pat Robertson talking about the president, quote, losing his mandate from heaven, and even going back a year to the Khashoggi murder, just to show that it wasn't just what happened yesterday, that you almost get a sense that there are a lot of conservatives, and in this case, an evangelical leader, who's keeping count, who's keeping score of all the things that they may have bit their tongue about that just are not conservative, are not right, and are not things that apparently they're going to continue to stand for.
Yeah, and Pat Robertson speaks to and for a lot of people in this country, so that was significant. You know, I couldn't help but think as I was listening to Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio and Ben Sass and others like that speak out against this yesterday, thinking that wasn't so bad, was it, guys? To come out and cross the president, to criticize him for something? What happened as a result of that? I haven't seen any mean tweets yet at Republicans, as the president did to Mitt Romney a couple days ago on the Ukraine question. But you can stand up for something when you actually believe in it, when you think the president's doing something wrong. This might be a good lesson to many of them. Richard Haas, you were talking earlier about how recklessly the president made this decision. NBC's reporting is that the chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, was on the phone call between the president and President Erdogan, quickly went, whoa boy, calls the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Esper, and says, hey, by the way, we're getting out of northern Syria. So the Secretary of Defense had no idea this was coming, and apparently most people in the world didn't know this was coming.
Yeah, telling the Secretary of Defense after the decision's made, that's not exactly consultation or a deliberative process. Look, this is the most ad hoc presidency we've ever seen. It's the least systemic presidency we've ever seen. Process is meant to protect. When you have a national security process, you scrub the decisions, you look at implementation, you get the intelligence. This is a president who's essentially dispensed with all of that. So the decision itself is uninformed. And then we surprised people in the field who are most affected, obviously the Kurds and others. And this adds to the sense that American foreign policy is improvised and that we're not taking into account the stakes, our interests, or the interests of others, that we're essentially making it up